Did you know that there are 9 different types of competitive horseback riding? From barrel racing, western pleasure, hunter jumper, and dressage, there's something for every interest. Today, I'm going to tell you about one of my passions, which is dressage. I grew up riding and showing in the hunter jumper world, and around the age of 16, I was introduced to dressage. I want to tell you about its rich history, the complexity of the tests and scoring, and finally, a little bit about the horses and what the riders wear. The concepts of dressage date back all the way to 350 BC when an ancient Greek historian and soldier named Xenophon completed his manuscript called On Horsemanship. As the years went on, militaries around the world used forms of dressage during battle. Now, during the Renaissance times, the wealthy aristocrats did what we would now call horse shows, but back then they called them equestrian parades. In 1571, the Imperial Spanish School, this one, of Vienna, was formed, and that is now what modern day dressage is based upon. The very first time the dressage was in the Olympics was in 1912, but way back then, only military officers were allowed to compete. It would stay that way until 1953, when the Olympic Committee finally opened up to civilian men and women. From this, the love of dressage bloomed all around the world, and in 1973, 38 pioneers from here in America founded the United States Dressage Federation. The Olympic sport of dressage is derived from a French word that means training. Now, this is the perfect way to describe it because it is all about the horse and the training and their suppleness and how calm and attentive their demeanor is. This is the most perfect word for it because dressage is often called the most highest form of horseback riding training. Many people actually call it art because it is like a dance between the horse and the rider as you become one. Dressage today is shown in a very small arena that is either 20 by 40 meters or 20 by 60 meters, and that depends on the kind of level that you're showing in. All around the outside of the arena, as you can see, there are little cones that are labeled with letters. Now, when dressage started a long time ago in German stables, the letters would stand for where people were supposed to wait for their horses. Now, the K stood for the Kaiser, who was the king, and like the R was a ritter, which is a knight. That's where he was supposed to wait for their horse. That way not everybody was congregated in the same area. Now, when we show today, the judges always sit at C, which is the far end over here. There are 6 different levels of dressage, 7 if you can include the Grand Prix, which is what is shown in the Olympics. Within all these levels, there's different tests, and you have to know all the tests in each level before you can move up. The movements within the test are scored on the score sheets from 0 if the movement's simply not done, up to 10. Now, within these scores, you want to get at least a 6.5 or better because that shows that you know the movement well enough. Like I said, when the judges sit at C, there's also someone there called a scribe. The scribe is the person who writes down the judges' scores for each movement. They also can write down any comments that the judges make. And the scribe is there because the judge never needs to take their eyes off the horse and rider. If they do, they could miss something. They could miss that you accidentally didn't turn at F, but you went on C instead. So that's why they are there. Now, on the scoring, it's not just the horse that's judged. The rider is as well. The rider is judged on their seat, which means you're supposed to sit as still as possible, and also on how the horse listens to you. Are they doing what you ask, or are they completely ignoring you and throwing their head and pretending like they don't want to do it? The horse, on the other hand, is judged on its impulsion, which means is it sluggish and not really moving, or is it rushing and running underneath you? It is judged on how it listens to its rider, and also its gait, which means is the stride really long or is it just underneath itself, which means that it's probably a little nervous. So once you get all of these scores put together, you can see that each movement gets a score. you put the total of your scores up against the total number that you could possibly get, and it will give you a percentage. If you get a percentage of 65 or better, it means that you are ready to move up to the next level. Now, most of the time people like to get this percentage of 65 or better at a couple different horse shows, just so that you know that you really are ready, that you've mastered all of the movements that you need there in order to move up. Any kind of horse can do dressage, but some are more apt to being able to do it and better equipped to do it. The most common horse that you see doing dressage is a warm blood. This is because they have long legs, muscular back, and long streamlined bodies. You can see on their neck, it's very muscular, and that's something that the judges look for, because you can see it as it curves and you make turns around the arena. So at almost all the horse shows, you do a braid on the mane. You can either do a braid all the way down, or these super tight braids that are then put into little knots to make it stay there. Unlike in Western or even show jumping, the tack that the horses use and wear is very minimalistic. And the tack just literally consists of the saddle and the bridle. Now on the saddle, if you can see, this part is very long, and that's to mimic the horse or the rider's leg, so that it looks as though the rider's leg is staying still, which is what you want. On the bridle, you can see it's simple black. There's a little bit of white piping, and that's allowed. And also up here, you're allowed to have a little bit of rhinestones, but only little, and that's all you can have. What the riders wear, or their attire, also goes along with the simplistic formality of dressage and what the horse's tack looks like. For levels 4 and below, everyone wears a simple coat, which is the further coat. Once you're up for level 4 and above, specifically Grand Prix Olympics, you graduate, is what they call it, up to a coat with tails. That's a big deal in the dressage world. Everyone always wears white breeches. Breeches are your pants, and black tall boots with spurs. Now, lower levels do not wear spurs, but once you reach level 5 and above, it is required you use spurs. This shows the judges if you're actually using too much leg and pushing on the horse too much or not. Something else that goes along with different levels is between a helmet and a top hat. Helmet can be used technically at any level. They're finally opening it up for also Grand Prix and Olympics, but you have to wear a helmet, level 4 and below. Once you reach level 5 and up, you can switch to the top hat. One of the other things is women have to wear their hair up, either completely in a hairnet all the way up, or you can use something that's called a show bow. The show bow just gives it a little bit more of some drama to it, since everything else is completely plain, and so most women decide to use the show bow. And one final really fun, interesting fact is that if a rider is part of the military or on the police force, they can actually wear their dress uniforms, whether it be your dress blues or your dress blacks, instead of wearing the normal attire. This is because it's pulling it back to when dressage first started in the Olympics, and it was only military officers that were allowed to compete. In conclusion, dressage is a very intricate sport that has stood the test of time. From its rich history that dates back in ancient Greece, the complex tests, the beautiful horses, the attire, the tack, everything. There's just so much to discover. So I hope that today you've learned something from all this, and maybe have piqued an interest for you or someone in your family to give it a try yourself. Thank you.